Our next presenter is Will Crooks. He's the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Children's Hope Chest, and he will be speaking on the launch of the purpose of your business into the world. He has a history of working in the nonprofit sector. He builds relationships with Hope Chest partners and potential partners as well. His deep passion is to mobilize people and resources to unleash hope, justice, and opportunity to the oppressed. I'm really, really glad to have you here, Will. It's lovely to meet you. You can hear us and see us and everything, right?
Absolutely. It's an absolute joy to be with all of you. And what an absolute wonderful shoulders to stand on as the baton gets passed today from Emilian and his talk of healthcare and giving access to that healthcare. To being a Purdue graduate. So hearing Stefan talk about my former university being so much of a part of what they're investing in, and Bora, the idea of community, which I'll talk a lot about today, in scalable impact. And who doesn't love the idea of Zach talking about whiskey and environmental sustainability. And then finally with Enrique and all the great work that he's doing. So it's just been a wonderful event, and to be able to speak a little bit today about how to get your business involved in these types of global initiatives, and doing that in a really strategic and a healthy way. So I'm going to be reiterating a lot of what's been told and telling some stories and just kind of emphasizing so much of the good things that we've heard today. So again, thank you. My introduction said Children's Hope Chest, and I also work for a DBA under Hope Chest, which is a doing business as, known as Greater Calling. And the Greater Calling part of our business works specifically with business leaders in their corporate social responsibility, or their ESG. And so that's what that company does. So you'll hear me talk and you'll see the branding of Greater Calling, but it's in the same family then with Hope Chest. So just wanting to start and talk a little bit about launching the purpose of your business into the world. I've been in the nonprofit realm for 25 years, and the last 11 in global development. I also have 3 adopted children from Ghana, and I know that there's some Ghana representation there. So a jinyame to my Ghanaian friends. All of what I do at a global scale or come alongside, it can kind of be narrowed down into one of my favorite phrases. It's an Aboriginal proverb by Lilla Watson, and she would say this: that if you've come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if your liberation is bound to mine, then we can work together. And if you remember 4 things, and these are the only 4 things that you remember from my presentation today. The first one is this idea of relationship, is having authentic relationship really is the idea of changing lives. When you have resource without relationship, things can be very transactional. And what I've heard with all of these speakers is we want things to be transformational. And we believe that that's done in relationship alone. The second idea is reciprocated value. Oftentimes we see and have pity on those in what we would consider the majority world or the developing world, far removed from the third world, instead of seeing on equal ground and seeing the value that those living in poverty bring to our worlds as well. And so in relationship, there has to be a reciprocity of value. The third thing is the idea of transaction versus transformation. And we want to move away from a transactional approach into something that is more transformational. Because when you have relationship, when you have reciprocal value, when you have transformation going on, then the fourth value of this idea of shared human dignity and connectivity throughout the globe, which we have today virtually. And so that's what I'm going to be speaking about today, is this idea of human dignity, of this idea of connectivity, wanting to be transformative, having a reciprocal experience, all built on the idea of relationship. So wanting to launch the purpose of your business into the world. And with this, we've seen a changing corporate narrative. And so I'm speaking to the leaders of corporations in this ESG space or in this CSR space. The changing narrative where ages ago, we had just this age of sustenance living with agriculture. People growing their food, eating their food, sustaining and living in this day-to-day thing. In America, we had the Industrial Revolution that was kind of signified by the Slater Mill in 1760. So we moved from this kind of singular family approach to a more industrialized, much larger approach, which moved into the age of mass production. And in 1913 in America, with Henry Ford and the assembly line, this idea of mass production. And that gave way then to the information age. And Zach was talking so incredibly about innovations and where meta is moving, and artificial intelligence, and all of these things were kind of birthed in the 1970s with this idea of information and how it changes the landscape of everything. So that's kind of been the changing corporate narrative. But where are we today? And many would believe and propose that we're now in the economy of purpose. Is we want to make meaning, not just money. And we've got Ed Catmull. He's the president of Disney's animation studios. He says the real goal of what we're doing is to have a positive impact on the world. And most companies are not only buying into this, but they're living out of this idea of an economy of purpose. Aristotle from the ancient days would say, the intersection where your gifts, talents, and abilities meet a human need, that's where you're going to discover your purpose. And it's not just a purpose as an individual. We can find purpose as a company, as a corporation. Roy Spence of the Purpose Institute would simply say, purpose is defined as a difference you're trying to make in the world. And so I would ask all of the leaders of industry out there does your company have a stated purpose? I know it has a vision statement and it has mission and core values, but as the famous TED Talk of what's the why behind what you're doing? What is the purpose of your company? And how can that make a difference in the world? John Elkington, when we talk about ESG, right? Environment, social, and governance, we think of John Elkington back in 1994. He is the pioneer of sustainability and corporate social responsibility. And he says there's a triple bottom line that all companies should be measured by in terms of their consciousness, but in terms of their effectiveness in the world. And that bottom line is profit, people, and planet. Are we profitable? Do we have a bottom line that is increasing? How are we treating people, our stakeholders, and how are we treating the planet? But did you know recently, as recent as 3 years ago, John said it's not enough. Actually, the profit, people, planet, it falls short. So all of these years later, 30 years later, he's saying that isn't enough. We're missing something. And that something is this idea of purpose. Because if companies truly understood their purpose and lived out their core values with purpose, then you're automatically going to be impacting profit, people, and the planet. So challenging the narrative of having the idea of purpose. So a purposeful company has this aspirational reason for existing that moves beyond just the bottom line. And that then impacts all of the stakeholders. We've seen time and time again how companies are attaching themselves to causes, attaching itself to different causes. Generational Z, a lot of their philanthropy giving isn't necessarily giving to nonprofits or to churches and things like that. Generation Z says, who are the companies that are making a difference in the world? And I'm going to give and buy from those companies. And isn't that interesting? Is the mindset of that's an idea of how Generation Z sees philanthropy. A sign of a purposeful company beyond an aspirational reason for existing is your purpose, is corporate social responsibility a strategy, or is it a checkbox? And then having employees unified through purpose. A great example in America, and our company is in Colorado Springs, kind of the mecca of nonprofits there, is this idea of employees are unified through purpose. And a great example in the 1960s, NASA trying to put a man on the moon in the whole space race in America, as first person to be on the moon. And one of the reporters was at NASA and asked a gentleman that was walking by sweeping the floor, "What do you do?" And he was the janitor. And what the janitor said is I'm helping put a man on the moon. So it's this idea of purpose. It's this idea of an aspirational goal that changes lives, all of the stakeholders. But these goals need to be set, they need to be measured, and they need to be communicated to be effective. Is what in your corporate social responsibility is making a difference? Do you even know, or are you just giving dollars? And then finding ways for partners and for customers to engage around this common purpose. If you're able to have a company that's living on purpose, then it becomes a four-part win. It's a win for your employees because there's now integration. It's not just retention, you're integrating employees and they're wanting to stay and be a part of the workplace because they have increased purpose and pride. It's a win for the customer because the customer is now building trust and building loyalty into your company, and you're having longer-term customers as well. Subscription-based customers that are coming back time and time again. It's a win for the company, for its brand narrative, for supporting vision and supporting mission as well as the bottom line. And then finally, it's a win for communities when corporate social responsibility is a strategic approach. When you're doing your business on purpose, the community itself wins, whether it's a local community or whether it's a global community. But we need to make sure that we're creating a culture of purpose versus just doing good things. And we heard Zach talk a little bit about this. Authenticity it only works if there's enormous authenticity behind it. 56% of a recent survey in 2020 say that purpose a lot of times feels like a PR exercise or corporate social responsibility instead of a business strategy. So it's not about, okay, do we do this so that we make money? It's all a part of the whole, and it starts with purpose. And so it has to have a level of authenticity to it. Secondly, there has to be leadership buy-in. It has to have everyone engaged, but it's being promoted from within as this is one of the things that we value. This is important to us. This is a part of our board meetings. This is a part of our water cooler talk. This is a part of our Slack and our Microsoft Teams. Is these types of things matter, and it starts with the executive leadership. And then finally is how do we create a culture is by providing opportunities for people to engage within our companies, our stakeholders. So it's not just our employees, but our customers, our board members as well. And so how do we provide those opportunities to actually demonstrate and affirm this as a value? So what we do as an organization is we help companies develop strategy, and then we actually allow them to implement those strategies globally. And then we're in 5 different countries. We're in Guatemala, we're in Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and also in Russia. And so in each one of the communities, not just the countries, we work in about 130 different communities around the world, is we take a very holistic approach to development. And here are the 12 key areas of development that we look at when we engage in a community, because we believe that empowering community leaders, empowering nonprofits within a community, empowering business initiatives, empowering on the medical side, on the mental health side, on the health and hygiene, in the education, we believe that the best way to care for what we would say vulnerable children especially, is to have a healthy community around them caring for vulnerable children. And so we believe that it's really the community's responsibility, and they're accountable for their own development, but we can help and bring in structure, not in a paternal way, but by empowering Indigenous leaders. And so all of our countries that we work in are run by nationals. We have only Indigenous leaders. But what we try to do in each community is build a development plan that has 3 phases of development within these 12 areas. And then ultimately, we want to be able to exit out of a community so we're not creating that dependency and that everybody is aware of. The last thing we want to do is lock people into being dependent on others. So let me give you an example of some of the work that we do. It's with our Village Savings and Loans program. This is just a wonderful example. It's one of 100 different examples of programs and projects that we run at these 130 locations across the world that your company could be a part of. So why a Village Savings and Loan program? And we run these, and we're going to use Uganda specifically. And so we're just going to narrow our focus into some of the remotest parts of the world where there is no financial service provider in these vulnerable communities whatsoever. And so we bring that. No access to capital and assets. And so we want to end this is create a culture of saving among members to address the shocks that come with life, and also then to invest in future growth, to change individuals, to change families, to change communities, to change a country. We want to be able to provide credit for group members to improve household incomes. We want to provide social safety nets. Emilian was talking about how nearly impossible it is to afford insurance or to be able to go and get medicine when needed. This Village Savings and Loans provides safety nets for that. And we want to move people beyond this idea of dependency into self-sustainability. So we have 81 groups in Uganda alone. 17 different communities are participating. We have nearly 2,500 members. You can see the male to female difference. And since its inception about 3 years ago, they have saved in US dollars over $128,000. Now, to the Uganda shilling, it sounds more impressive. Nearly $500 million has been saved by these group members. And so they save to be able to invest and to be able to save more, to be able to invest in businesses. So that's some of the things that are happening with the program. And what impact is happening? Because we want to be able to measure the impact, not just say we're doing a lot of great things, but we want to be able to actually measure what's going on. And you've heard all day today talking about women's empowerment, and 73% of who we work with are women of that group. And this gives a strengthened position of women in their communities in a political way and at home, where often so many abuses take place, whether it's a social paternal abuse, whether it's emotional abuse, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse. Women are viewed in rural Uganda specifically as property. But the idea that these VSLAs, and now they become entrepreneurs, now they become business owners, now they have a higher standing, and there is less of a power gap than there ever has been in these communities, where women are able to open small business, they're able to acquire land, they're able to acquire livestock, build better houses, and take care of those who are dependent on them. Another impact is a diversity of income sources. So 50% now have multiple sources of revenue streams that are coming in. And there's an access to markets. And one of the big things with poverty is not having an access to local markets, in terms of not only being able to put something on an animal and bring it to the market that happens once a week, but actually having a cell phone, actually having transportation to bring your goods or your services to larger parts, of the country. So this diversity of income has been a huge impact for our Village Savings and Loan Program in Uganda. And this is what Emilian was talking about, this idea of micro insurance. Is these Village and Savings and Loans members, they pay a fee to a social fund. And so these now cover emergencies like illness, funeral expenses, home repairs, school fees for orphans of deceased relatives. And on these loans that get paid back, and that's how the Village Savings and Loans grows and grows and grows, just like in global banking, it's built on affordable interest rates at 10% versus what they would be charged, where women really can't get loans, but even men are charged at an exorbitant 30 to 35% of interest. So this social fund, or this micro insurance, there's no interest charge for this. And the safety net provided a higher investment rate for people in their savings and in their giving. And it becomes a community type view, where Bora was talking about is really engaging the community to care for itself, not looking for outside help, but being able to be in community together and seeing lives transformed through these savings groups. And so the idea of sustainability, self-replication that you've heard a lot about today in these Village Savings and Loan is we see 95 to 100% in Uganda that are continuing year after year. We see a surge of new groups formed that we're not even training, that are just spawning off of these other groups. There's a strong sense of ownership amongst members for self-reliance. And so these types of things, when you have a high degree of not only buy-in, but a high number of people that are contributing to this, there's low overhead that makes these Village Savings and Loans incredibly profitable and financially sustainable because they support themselves. So we're looking, in this example, we're looking for companies to invest and then to be able to be hands-off and to then watch the impact of the small initial investment and how we can scale that in all of our countries. So we've talked at a big level, and then we've kind of narrowed it down in terms of a big level of community development, and then handpicking one project like the Village Savings and Loan in Uganda. And then let's get to storytelling. This is one example, and I could bring 1,000 examples, as Enrique could have as well. So this was a child in one of our communities, one of the 130 communities that we serve, and her name is Esther. So she was a child in our program, and then growing up, she took advantage of one of our tailoring programs, and then she actually became a mentor and a trainer in our tailoring program. And she had a bigger vision, though. And so she got engaged in her Village Savings and Loan program, and you can see the picture there on the left. And she invested $50 USD of her own money, and then she borrowed $150 to open a shop. And this was 8 years ago. And so she now has a child. And with that, with the shop, with the proceeds from the shop, she's able to not only pay for school fees, she's able to pay for rent. She's able to pay for the shop's rent, her living, for medical expenses, where she's not dependent on anyone. And she's able to raise her family. She's able to contribute to the community through her shop. And there is nothing but a remarkable amount of pride. And so when Esther takes your hand and she takes you to her store, she is nothing but smiles and nothing but pride in this idea of, I have dignity. I have something to offer to the community. I have something to offer to my family. And all of this was just by being a part of a village savings and loan. And at the end of the day, this is a multiplier effect. So you take Esther's story and you multiply that times 1,000, times 2,000, times 3,000, times 10,000. And that's where transformation happens. And that's where relationship can happen. That's the invitation to come and be a part of. See, we believe that by working at a micro level, we can have a macro change. And it starts with stories like Esther. So how do you, as a company, activate purpose? We see it as an intersection of, what are you built to do as a company? What do you love to do? Where are the passion points? And how do those things change the world? And we want to help you find that. Some do's and don'ts of impactful corporate social responsibility departments. Number one is, on the do side, is understand what your employees are passionate about so they can become more passionate about your company and about their work. Being able to offer time off for employee participation. How do you get large scale employee buy-in? Provide opportunity when there are volunteer opportunities, that it's within skill sets of people that are volunteering. Knowing the difference between relief and development, and really wanting to come alongside this idea. There are times for relief for sure, but there's also a time for development. And that's more where that long-term relationship opportunity to build relationship and to see transformation happen within the development sphere. And the idea of measuring the impact that's happening and reporting it. Don't ignore the struggles of the world while pushing employees more on the bottom line. It's a both and type of thing. Is what is relevant today? What are points that employees are going to buy into? Don't confuse marketing sponsorship with healthy CSR activities. And there's a balance and a tension there with how do we use marketing in our CSR, but not making it about the company, not making it about the bottom line, actually making it about the relationship and about the transformation that's happening. And don't make CSR about the bottom line. I think that happens naturally when companies begin to live on purpose. So the next big outsourcing trend is how to do good, and companies asking for help versus just writing checks. How do we partner with the right organizations? And you've heard from amazing organizations today to be partnered with. But where the sweet spot is what that company's why is. Do you have shared values? Is there an opportunity for volunteering and building relationship? Can they measure impact and be able to report the impact back to you that your dollars are having? What's the company's track record and the nonprofit's track record, and who are they accountable to? And what levels of accountability are built in? And so when you can answer those questions, now you've hit your sweet spot as a company of who you would want to partner with as a nonprofit. So finally, just next steps, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink would say, to prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, because the companies need to exist too, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. And that's I think the new narrative that we're living into is, how do companies, how do corporations, how do we do business in the world that makes the world better, that increases human dignity and connectivity beyond just the computer, beyond technology, but how do we increase those things? So create hope, create dignity, create connection, launch the purpose of your business into the world. And Greater Calling is here to help.
That was absolutely amazing. We've had some comments. Will, your energy is amazing. You should have started your presentation with welcome to my TED Talk, because that was inspiring. You need your own TV show. I would watch. Thank you. Honestly, some of the things that you said were really, really inspiring. The quote that you referenced earlier from JFK about the janitor who put the man on the moon, 100%. That is something that is actually commonly spoken about in the charity sector, to allow people to always make them feel that they have a place and that they are making that impact and they are making that difference. And just all the comments that you've had specifically about Gen Z and about how they're interacting and reacting to, CSR, which has been around for decades. Yes. CSR is just, it's like the third and fourth industrial revolution. We need to kind of put that to one side and think of this as something that's gone beyond CSR. CSR has evolved and expired. Now we are looking for a lifestyle change. We're looking for brands to actually not have a product or a byproduct called CSR with a department. It has to be a full circle 360 integration into everything that they do. Thank you, honestly, so much. Apologies, I know that everything has overrun, and I know, Will, you've got to head off as well. Please, if you get a chance, pop into chat if you've got any of the videos, any of the links and events that you are, participating in. It would be an absolute pleasure to hear more, and all the details about Will are in the bio as well. And I'm sure we will hopefully meet again, and I will have more opportunity to be inspired. Thank you so much, Will.
Thank you so much, Roxy. It's an absolute pleasure. I was able to coordinate and get some things worked out, so I can stay on for 10 or 15 minutes longer. And so I will be here, but it's an absolute joy. And the energy, if you will, it comes out of passion. I'm passionate about the work that is being done. Yeah.
It absolutely shows. I honestly wish we had longer, but we will definitely come back to this in the Q&A if you are available. Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you, Roxy.